For a long time, I felt stuck between two worlds. When I worked in the DAW, I had control. I could fix everything later. But the process felt slow, boring and disconnected. When I worked with the hardware, the music felt alive. But once the recording was finished, there was no way back. For years, I tried to make one behave like the other, and it didn't work. In this video I want to share the workflow that finally helped me finish music again, without losing the vibe, and without sitting for days in front of the screen. For a long time, I felt like I had to choose, either make music on the hardware, record everything live, and lose the possibility to fix things later, or I go back to the DAW and lose all the vibe, energy, and fun that made me fall in love with music in the first place. I've been making music for almost 20 years, and for a very long time my main environment was Logic. I was extremely comfortable there. Editing, fixing, improving, arranging, mixing, everything was possible. But when I switched to hardware around 5 or 6 years ago, everything changed. And honestly, for the first few years I almost stopped finishing music completely. Not because I didn't have ideas, but because I couldn't switch my way of thinking. I was still thinking like a DAW producer. When you work in DAW, you're used to one very powerful thing. You can always come back later. You can change notes. You can fix the mix. You can improve details. You can undo mistakes. But hardware doesn't work like that. When you record live, once it's done, it's done. And that was very uncomfortable for me at the beginning. So my first solution was simple. I started multi-tracking everything. Recording every drum machine, every synth, every part on a separate channel, so I could come back later and fix it. In theory it sounded perfect, but in reality it completely killed the vibe. Latency started to appear, the groove felt different, and the recorded version never sounded like the actual jam. The more I tried to make hardware behave like a DAW, the worse the results became. Eventually I found a way to record proper one-take stereo performances. No multi-tracking, no fixing later, just committing to the moment. That changed everything. The energy came back. The music felt alive again, and I finally started finishing tracks. I explained this process in detail in my previous video called Jump to Track. If you haven't seen it, I'll leave the link in the description. But after recording many tracks this way, a new problem appeared. Sometimes I miss something. I miss the polish, I miss the detail, I miss that high fidelity sound you can achieve inside the AW. But every time I try to go back to full DAW production, I hated it. Sitting for days with a mouse, staring at the screen, endless arranging, special arrangements. Because when you work with hardware, arrangement happens live. It takes exactly as long as the track itself. But in a DAW arrangement can take days. And for me, that completely killed the motivation. So I realized something important. I didn't want to choose between hardware and DAW. I didn't want to choose between vibe and detail. I needed a third way. That's when I started doing something different. Instead of recording a full finished track on the hardware, I started recording only the backbone of the track. Sometimes just a beat, sometimes just a bass line, sometimes bass plus one or two very minimal elements. But I still recorded it as a full-length song. With an intro, with movement, with breakdowns, with drops, even though half of the elements were missing on purpose. And this changed everything. Because when you focus on only one thing, you can perform it much better. You are not distracted, you're not jumping between machines, you're not overwhelmed, you're squeezing as much expression and movement as possible from a single instrument. And because the structure already exists, finishing the track later in DAW becomes very fast, usually 1 or 2 hours, not days. A good example of this is when I record bass lines with my Moog DFAM. It's only one instrument, only a bass line, but while recording, I treat it as it has to carry the entire track. I try to make it interesting from beginning to the end. I think about tension, release and transitions. And because it's only one sound, it's much easier to stay focused and musical. This workflow gives me the best of both worlds. Hardware gives me character, saturation, imperfections and vibe. The DAW gives me clarity, detail, layering and high fidelity sounds. Together they balance each other perfectly. And most importantly, this process is fun, it's fast, it keeps me inspired, and it allows me to actually finish music again. If you're stuck somewhere between hardware and DAW, maybe you don't need to choose one or the other. Maybe you just need to change what each of them is responsible for.